Hello, everybody. I am just clicking. Okay. Hi. Welcome. And yeah, happy Thursday. We are going to be talking today about narcissistic families. Hey, Samuel. So narcissistic families, this does not mean that the entire family is narcissistic. This means that the family is operates with at least one narcissist in it, and so it will obviously affect the entire family unit. And the way that we grow up has a lot to do with what we think about ourselves, how we view relationships, what love feels like to us, all of those things. So I know that typically when we think of narcissistic abuse, we typically think of a romantic relationship or some kind of partnership like that. But we can definitely have all kinds of relationships with these people, including they can be our parents, they can be our grandparents, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a sibling, any relationship really. But the scary part about having a narcissistic, well, there are many scary parts about having a narcissistic parent, but the main one to me is that it is establishing these patterns in you early on. It's not like you consciously choose this. We have talked before many times, but I feel like it bears repeating every day that that our subconscious mind is basically the ruler of all the things that we do. These are the patterns, the habits. This is what we think about ourselves. This is how we interact with the world, feel about the world. It's going to tell us what we're afraid of, what we believe we're good at, what we believe we're worth, all of those things. Very, very important. And those things start getting established when we are children based on what we are viewing in the world, but more importantly and more specifically within our family unit. Are we being taught that love is safe, that there's congruency between what people say and what people do? What are we being taught about our role, not just in the family, but our role in the world? What are we being taught about what is going to get us accepted by other people and what is going to get us rejected by other people? Keeping in mind that when you are a child, that is your safety, that is your security. It's not about being liked, it's not about being popular. That is bred into you, that is innate in you from birth to protect you from being discarded, so that you are actually taken care of. Because as babies and children, we literally need to rely on other people. But we don't realize that these things establish patterns in our subconscious minds that if we don't address later on, they will run amok. They will control the things that we think and feel, all of our habits, all of those things. Even if you know it, even if you can recognize, okay, hey, I grew up in this kind of a family. I know that that wasn't right. I know that these things are what are healthy in a relationship. It doesn't matter if you don't change the subconscious beliefs. You could literally grow up to be an expert on the topic of healthy or unhealthy relationships. If you haven't fixed your subconscious relationship to these beliefs, then you are still going to be a prisoner to them. Our subconscious mind is so much more in control than we believe it is. It can control the way that we feel about things. We'll just think, well, no, that's just the way that I feel, or this situation is making me feel that way. No, your subconscious mind, it operates on a pain pleasure principle. So everything is just kind of primitively absorbed by the world, or absorbed by the subconscious as either being pleasurable or being painful. And it doesn't matter if something is actually literally painful or pleasurable. It matters what is considered familiar or unfamiliar to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind only wants what it already knows. Anything that is foreign or unknown to the subconscious registers as pain, it registers as danger. And so your subconscious is going to force you to sabotage whatever that is to get it away from you. So that's why we repeat a lot of the same toxic traits and repeated relationship patterns that we witnessed when we were children. And if somebody treats us better than that, or we start getting better than what we knew, then our subconscious mind is going to tell us, nope, warning, this is dangerous. We don't like this. Get away from it as soon as possible. So it's important to understand these things because that's where we start to fix the issues with that. That's where we start to heal from what we experienced in our childhood, and then we can move forward and break the cycle. Because chances are, if you had a narcissistic parent, they had narcissistic parents, or they had at least one narcissistic parent. It is a pattern that repeats itself, that propagates until somebody consciously fixes it and decides to make the change. So, like I said, family is where we first learn love, how to be loved, what love feels like, and how it's expressed. Whether something that's given, whether it's something that's given freely, or whether it's something that we have to earn. Is it uncomfortable to show affection? All of those things. We learn. This is where we learn to trust or not to trust. Our earliest relationships teach us whether or not people can be trusted. Are they emotionally safe? Are they dependable? Are they worthy of our vulnerability? We are very vulnerable when we're children, obviously. And but we remain vulnerable even into adulthood. I mean, let's be honest. This is where we learn about safety. Are we safe in the world? The home is supposed to be the place where your nervous system can just relax. Unfortunately, it is not like that for many people, not only children. If you are in a narcissistic relationship, then you might not feel safe even in your own home. You might feel unable to even relax in your own home. We learn when we are children from our family dynamic and from our home situation whether the world is unpredictable and frightening, whether we these are the things that are going to make us grow up and be on constant alert. Whether you know it or not, by the way, you might not consciously be aware of it, but your nervous system might be sending you signals that you're in fight, flight, or freeze at all times. It's actually very, very common. And once you learn the warning signs to know what to look for, you might realize that you're not as relaxed as you think you are. I mean, we get indications, right? We know that if we're not sleeping well, all kinds of health issues are caused by stress and the nervous system. So we definitely are learning more about those. We learn our boundaries from our family relationship. Healthy families teach us that our thoughts, feelings, and personal space are respected, while unhealthy families often teach us that our needs don't matter. And we learn our self-worth. We learn that the way that we're treated by our caregivers, that's the foundation for how valuable, lovable, and deserving that we believe that we are. So when those things are distorted, instead of learning that love is unconditional, we learn that affection must be earned through performance, obedience, and self-sacrifice. Instead of trusting our own instincts, we learn to question our perceptions and prioritize everyone else's reality over our own. Instead of feeling safe, we become hyper-vigilant, always scanning for the next conflict or emotional storm. Instead of having healthy boundaries, we feel guilty for saying no, or we believe our only value comes from meeting other people's needs and not our own. And instead of growing into a secure sense of self-worth, we spend our lives chasing approval, believing that if we could just be good enough, lovable enough, or successful enough, we'll finally deserve the love that we should have received all along. We often spend decades believing that dysfunction is normal because it's just what we know. We can make jokes about it. We can kind of, it kind of goes back to being able to name something. When you have a term for it, when you can identify it, when you can spot the patterns, that's kind of step one. And obviously that's what this is about. It's about just being able to pick out patterns and spot them, and then figure out for ourselves, is this something we need to protect ourselves or not? We're obviously not diagnosing anybody here. We could not do that, but helping people to spot the patterns and also to understand them. So what makes a narcissistic family? A narcissistic family doesn't become narcissistic simply because one member has narcissistic traits. A narcissistic family develops when everyone else, either consciously or subconsciously, begins organizing their lives around managing that person's emotions, expectations, protecting their ego, and maintaining the illusion that they have created. So a healthy family can have a narcissistic person in it, but that is happening if it's a healthy situation. Everyone else is kind of recognizing what's going on there, and they see the behavior is unhealthy. They set healthy boundaries for themselves. They speak honestly, and they protect one another. But in a narcissistic family system, it's different because the entire household is now operating and adapting according to the narcissist. People stop telling the truth to avoid upsetting them. Children learn to read the narcissist's mood before expressing their own needs. Other family members begin making excuses for their behavior or blaming the victim instead. So it's almost like the narcissist becomes the center of gravity in a family dynamic, and everything is kind of bending and catering to that one person. Instead of everyone having equal value, one person's feelings become the most important thing in the family, more important than everyone else's. And, some people in the family will be protecting the narcissist. Some will be maintaining appearances. Some will be just avoiding conflict at all costs just to keep the peace. These things stay with you as an adult. And if this kind of rings true to you, where maybe you're one of these people who's constantly just trying to keep the peace, avoiding conflict with other people, being a people pleaser, being the one that everyone can depend on, while meanwhile you can't depend on anyone around you, there might be an indication of this in your background. So some common characteristics of a narcissistic family: no emotional safety, love feels conditional. If you constantly feel like you're walking on eggshells, image matters more than reality. And these are families that will have secrets. Healthy families, they have things that might be private, but they solve problems. Whereas a narcissistic family, it's like the number one priority is to hide whatever it is going on. A lot of times triangulation is used in these family dynamics, which is a manipulation tactic where multiple people are used to kind of like pit one another or use one another against each other. It's used to control, divide, create jealousy, or avoid direct communication. And it keeps the relationships unstable and centered around the narcissist. Scapegoating. This is when one family member is unfairly blamed for the family's problems, carrying the criticism, shame, and anger that the others avoid facing. I know people who very much felt this way in their childhood, and they also feel this way in their adulthood, and they're not wrong. This isn't paranoia. They're not throwing a pity party for themselves. These are real things. And another thing in narcissistic families, there'll be emotional inconsistency, unpredictable affection, approval or punishment that keeps family members anxious and constantly trying to earn love. It's very important as a parent to be consistent with what you say and demonstrating the same. If you say one thing to your child, but you show them another, that is, it kind of has a snowball effect for the rest of their lives. It's almost one of the most important things that you can do, other than, obviously protecting their safety and showing them love, is to be emotionally consistent, to be consistent with your words, because you have to keep in mind, children don't have the ability to discern whether or not something is true. when they are little, before they grow that area, that critical area of mind, which develops around 5 to 7 years old, which becomes kind of the barrier between the conscious and the subconscious mind. Prior to that, they are wide open and they don't have what we call critical thinking. Everything they experience and everything that they hear is just absorbed as truth. It is the truth. So when there are inconsistencies between things being said or things being said and actions taking place, then it is like this malfunction that happens in a child's brain. So it's really important to be consistent. Um, okay, so this is, I think, one of the most interesting parts. Like every time we talk about narcissism, it's always very interesting, the terminology and learning to spot the patterns and finding out that there are actually, it's almost like these playbooks or like a play that was written and the cast of characters is all like, exactly the same. It's like 90 different renditions of the play Grease. You're always going to have a Kanicki, you're always going to have a Sandy, you're always going to have a Rizzo, but they might be played by different actors. But I mean, on the surface, it's still the play Grease. And that's why it's interesting when you start digging into this kind of dynamic to find these roles and be like, holy crap, that's like exactly what I experienced. That's to a T what it was like in my family. So these are the roles that everyone gets assigned. Obviously, nobody gets actually assigned these. People will just automatically kind of fill the role that they will take the signals and they will fill the role. And not every family has 5 or 6 or however many I have here children. There might be only 1 or 2 of these represented. They can one person can display multiple of these. You can kind of change your roles depending on the situation or, whatever. You could be an only child and still display a couple of these. It doesn't matter, but it's, these are the roles that typically show up in a narcissistic family. So first and foremost, we have the golden child. And that's, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think we all kind of know innately what that is. It's a child who is idealized and treated as this just extension of the narcissist. This is the child that is going to reflect their greatness and validate their self-image. Unfortunately, this doesn't, I mean, so much more awful that it happens to children, but it also continues into adulthood. The parents of narcissists or the narcissistic parents of children, grown adult children, can still use their adult child who is out there living their own life as an extension of their own self-image, because everything is about them. So if you're not succeeding, that's a reflection on them, and they will find a way to make everything about themselves. But so the golden child is praised excessively rather than being balanced and having healthy encouragement. They're constantly told that they're exceptional in ways that inflate performance and inflate performance over genuine self-esteem. They're held to impossible standards sometimes. Their value literally depends on living up to unrealistic expectations. And that can leave them feeling like failure is not an option. I knew kids like this growing up. It was like everything had to be perfect. And some of these kids were only children. In fact, if there is an only child of a narcissist, that child is going to be the golden child on top of, maybe some of these other ones. But I remember having friends when I was little that they were so perfect in all of these ways, but they felt immense stress when it came to school. I mean, these kids were under stress and pressure. I remember being like who cares? Whatever. It was so weird to me that these kids felt like adult levels of stress and anxiety, having panic attacks when tests were coming and things like that. So I felt awful for them. I still feel awful for them. Well, what is Australian. Thank you. Thanks. Awesome. Okay. So the golden child, some of the being treated that way, being treated like they are the the golden child, that they are the chosen one, the exceptional one. This often grows into entitlement when they're adults. Being consistently treated as superior can lead them to believe that they deserve special treatment or exempt from the rules that apply to other people. That's how people end up in lots and lots of trouble. That's when they are adults, because there's something about the narcissist that and not all golden children grow up to be narcissists, obviously, but that kind of sense of entitlement, that kind of sense of the rules don't apply to me, is typically something that we see in narcissistic behavior, NPD, and malignant narcissism, sociopathy, things like this. It's very interesting to me because it's almost like they don't even, we know they don't care about other people around themselves, but it's almost like they don't even care about the future version of themselves either. It's win at all costs now. And so they make amazing mistakes when, because they think that they're never going to get caught. I was looking into something. Oh, it was a group of people, and there were a bunch of people talking about going through divorces with narcissistic people. And one of the patterns that you saw over and over and over again was that these, when the people opposing the person in a narcissistic divorce hired a forensic accountant, it was like these people made the dumbest mistakes, because they literally just, it didn't even occur to them that they would ever be held accountable, that anybody would ever dare to try to hold them to the same set of rules that the rest of the world has to operate in. And so they made these glaring mistakes. So they can be their own worst enemy when they really believe that the rules don't apply to them. They come across as trying to be the smartest person in the room. And that's part of the problem. They really do genuinely believe that. So they will underestimate everyone around them, thinking, well, they're never going to catch me. And even if they tried, I'll get off, because they've been so good at keeping people around them that are just yes men, that are just the flying monkeys. They really think that the world operates like that. And then you get one of them in a courtroom, and it's quite a disaster for that person. And, clearly the golden child can also end up being the narcissist themselves, because they learned that love, admiration, and self-worth come from status and achievement rather than authenticity. So they may adopt the same unhealthy patterns that they were raised with. Again, it's very sad. It isn't an actual lofty, heightened sense of self at its core. That's how it comes across. But at its core, it is the lack of feeling good about themselves from within. Every sense of validation has to come externally. And that's part of being a narcissist. It's important to point out that golden children are victims too. They are loved for their performance, not for who they are. And that is possibly the most tragic when it comes down to all of these roles. All of these roles are very sad. But ultimately, to be given the message that you are only loved if you are high performing, or if you are beautiful enough, if you are smart enough, all of these things, exact opposite that we should be teaching to our children. Hey, Becky Lou. Hey, TU. Hey, Mama the Squirrel. Only 30% humidity. My goodness. I had two sisters that were always in trouble. My mom would say to me, if you do something bad, it will mean we were failures as parents. Okay, no pressure. It puts so much pressure on me and to be perfect in their eyes. I wasn't perfect. They just never found out about it. Yeah, I mean, what pressure there's no such thing as perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. So to put pressure on a child to be something that literally is impossible. Hi, Cassandra. Hey, Disco. Okay, so we've got the golden child. Now we've got the scapegoat. The scapegoat child is assigned the role of carrying the family's blame, becoming the target for criticism, punishment, or shame, regardless of who is actually responsible. They often grow up to believe that they are the problem, when in reality, they're just absorbing the dysfunction the family refused to confront. So that is their role. They carry the dysfunction of the family. Everything becomes their fault. They're constantly pestered for what they didn't do, and accused of being sensitive, accused of starting drama, being difficult. And eventually, these people learn to believe it. Ironically, I find this interesting. Scapegoats tend to be the healthiest member of the family because they refuse to participate in the illusion. They get isolated because they typically are not living in the land of make believe like the rest of the family. If there's something unhealthy going on, they're typically the ones to point it out. So they get the smear campaign. That is always a part of the narcissistic dynamic. So if you were the scapegoat in your family, I'm so, so sorry. But also, you might actually be the healthiest person to make their way out of that family. Next, we have the lost child. The lost child survives by staying invisible, avoiding conflict, and asking for as little as possible. They often become highly independent and self-reliant, probably at an early age, but they may grow up feeling emotionally disconnected, unseen, and unsure of their own needs or identity. Like I was saying before, it's possible to have been the lost child and the scapegoat in your family. These people are going to be probably quiet, feel invisible. They'll be highly independent. They will also be one of those people that avoids conflict. And then when they grow up, they will be hyper independent, and they can tend to be socially anxious and emotionally distant. They might not be very comfortable with affection because they didn't really experience it. Everything was their fault. When people are constantly harping on you, you don't feel accepted, so you don't feel worthy. I see people already identifying their roles. It's rough, man. I feel so bad. I've had some experience in my life. I feel very, very fortunate that my family dynamic was not like that. I feel like I had a very normal childhood. And so, but when people talk about these things and tell me about how their own mother, the person that brought them into this world, is toxic to them, it's I can't even imagine it. It's heartbreaking. Okay, then you have the mascot. The mascot copes with the family's dysfunction by using humor, charm, or playfulness to ease tension and distract from conflict. While they often seem carefree, they may hide deep anxiety and learn that their value comes from entertaining others rather than expressing their true feelings. They use humor, they make everybody laugh, they diffuse tension. These are probably going to be the children who do not show a lot of affection or emotion, or kind of, it's almost like they can be really likable and charismatic, but at the crux of it, they're going to be kind of uncomfortable with real intimacy. These children often grow into somebody who can't tolerate serious emotion or real human connection when they grow up. It's kind of like they take it upon themselves to keep the levity, to when everything is so dark, and the narcissistic parent is always one bad mood away from just, toppling everything to the ground or ruining the day. They learn to be kind of quick on their feet and diffuse the situation by being a clown almost. Then there is the caretaker / parentified child. The caretaker or parentified child is forced to take on adult responsibilities, emotionally, practically, or both. You know, they could be raising their little brothers and sisters, or they could be the one that is, um, you know, everybody leans on, including the parents. You will see this a lot in families or children of parents with addiction. Sometimes the children have to become the adults and take care of the parents. So these people will often be caring for their siblings or even their own parents. They learn that their worth comes from meeting everyone else's needs, frequently growing into adults who struggle with boundaries, guilt, and prioritizing themselves. So again, this is another really heartbreaking one. The child becomes the parent, and that should never be the case. They are comforting mom, or they're managing dad's emotions, or they are, you know, taking care of their siblings. Obviously, helping out with your siblings is not a bad. None of these things are bad things in and of themselves, but compiled together and mixed with the degree to which all of these things happen, it does completely change things. Everything is like that. Everything in the world is like that. Sex, for example, sex can be a beautiful thing, or it can be an absolute terrible weapon, harmful thing. It's all in how it's used. And so, it's the amount, it's the intention, it's everything. These children are going to be kind of the mature one in the family, and they grow up to become adults who believe that their worth comes from taking care of other people, taking care of everyone, really, not just not just their closest people. They will step in and kind of take care of everyone else. They're always like kind of pinging somebody talking about being in need of something or having a problem. They're always constantly thinking of how they can help that person solve that problem. And they don't typically have that in return. And probably if they ever found somebody who was going to give back to them and do those things for them, it might bounce off that subconscious programming as warning. We don't like this. This is unfamiliar. This is danger to us. If we can't be the one providing for everybody, then we lose our worth, and then we lose our value, and then we lose the people around us. We lose our security. We're not going to be accepted anymore. So unfortunately, they probably never get it back. Very rarely do they get it back, and then it'll probably make them feel uncomfortable. So they can't even enjoy somebody helping them out. Okay, so those are the children's roles. And like I said, you could be a mixture. Not every role has to be represented, but that's just kind of the basic template. And then you have the narcissistic parents, and different types of how it presents itself. So the narcissistic parent places their own emotional needs above their children's, using control, manipulation, or conditional love to keep the family revolving around them rather than fostering their children's healthy emotional development. You have one job as a parent. Well, you have many jobs as a parent, but your job is to selflessly give that child anything that they literally need. We're not talking about wants here. And to put them before your own needs. Most people find that comes to them quite naturally. I have been, especially when I was younger, I was very self-centered. I was, nobody relied on me for anything because they probably couldn't. I wasn't putting anyone's needs before my own, but as soon as I had a child, it just became a part of who I was. It's just automatic. And unfortunately, it's not like that for everybody, and it probably has a lot to do with what they witnessed when they were growing up. So there is the overt parent. This is kind of the more obvious one, right? It's they openly seek control, admiration, and obedience, often using intimidation, criticism, anger, or grandiosity to dominate the family and maintain their authority. So this type of narcissistic parent is going to be dominating, they're going to be demanding, they're going to be critical of everybody in the family, they're going to be controlling. Everybody knows who's in charge. Everybody knows that it's this is the person who you need their permission to do the things. This is the person who we need to make sure that they are satisfied. Otherwise, the day is going to get ruined, or everybody's going to pay for it. Then you have the covert parent. Covert narcissism is very interesting. We're going to do a whole episode on that. It almost presents itself in a way that is the opposite of what you would think of when you first think of narcissism. But the covert narcissistic parent, they're going to control through guilt, martyrdom, passive aggression, emotional manipulation. And they often want to appear selfless or constantly telling you that they're being misunderstood. But the kind of underlying thing that we're looking here is that, again, is everything else revolving around this person's needs? Because you can be giving, you can be selfless, you can be misunderstood, but is it that, are you making everybody else cater to you? And are you kind of the gravitational pull of the entire family unit? So they use victimhood, martyrdom, guilt, passive aggression, and manipulation through suffering. Like, oh my gosh, look how bad I'm suffering. Everybody needs to take care of me. I've done so much for this family, all that. Then you've got the successful narcissistic parent. They tie love and approval to achievement, status, or image, pressuring their children to excel because their children's success becomes an extension of their own identity and self-worth. These are the parents who tend to operate more like groupies than parents. Telling their children how wonderful they are and showing their kids off and kind of living, or not kind of, but absolutely living vicariously through the child. Sometimes there can be unhealthy attachments where it's almost like, you'll see this in mother-son relationships. I'm sure it happens in father-daughter as well, but it's kind of a cliche sometimes with mothers-in-law, where it's almost like the wife feels like she is competing with the mother-in-law for the core relationship, where like the mother-in-law almost feels like her son is her spouse and treats him like the spouse. So these people are more concerned with the way that everything looks publicly. They will use a lot of pressure on the kid to be perfect. They will offer conditional love, and the children end up becoming trophies. You can have the spiritual parent, spiritual narcissistic parent. They can use religion, spirituality, or moral authority to maintain control, presenting themselves as uniquely enlightened, chosen, or deeply righteous. Instead of encouraging a child's independent beliefs and emotional growth, they weaponize spiritual teachings to demand obedience, justify harmful behavior, silence criticism of themselves, and convince the child that questioning them is a sign of spiritual failure, rebellion, or lack of faith. Over time, the child may begin to confuse compliance with virtue and struggle to trust their own intuition. So they'll use, enlightenment or religion or forgiveness, morality to control. Again, it comes down to controlling everyone around you, to portray yourself in a way that garners a certain response no matter what. I had friends like this, or friends that had mothers like this when I was growing up, like this kind of new agey. They were all like, it was always a new religion. It was always a new spirituality, a new spiritual belief, a new, what's it called? A new retreat that they were going to, a new guru that they were seeing, whatever. And I mean, even as a child, it kind of seemed to me like none of these people were actually doing the inner work. This became an extension of um, the reflection of me, the reflection of myself. How do I look to everyone around me? And using that kind of lofty spiritual essence, or that religion or whatever it is, to act better than everyone around you. They also will, there's a lot to do with like forgiveness. Like forgiveness will be intrinsically linked back to the religion or the spiritual practice, where they will weaponize it against children and like kind of contort those beliefs into serving whatever, whichever way they want to move the child. Mama the Squirrel says, it can happen for a mother-daughter relationship as well. Once I started learning awakening, I realized that I was using my daughter as a crutch. Wow, that is very, how amazing for you to be able to see that in yourself, to be able to recognize it, and then to be able to admit it. Yeah, we can fall into these traps when we don't, when we are, shown a particular, when we're given a particular example, that's what we're typically going to end up being like. All right, so family dynamics. Once these roles are established, the family dynamics begin to operate like a system. Every interaction, from who gets praised to who gets blamed, serves to maintain the narcissist's control and preserve the family's dysfunctional balance. So triangulation is a word that we've brought up many times in this show. That's when the narcissist parent will pit a third person, or children against children. Basically, they want conflict instead of communication directly, because if people can communicate directly in the life of a narcissist, then that puts the narcissist at risk. They need their fingerprints on everything. They need to be the intermediary between all communication, because they get to spin it. They want to make sure that people aren't sharing their notes with each other. They will create jealousy intentionally, competition, mistrust of other people. They'll talk smack behind each other's back so that one person will end up mistrusting the other, and vice versa. And then obviously causing division between family members. This keeps everyone focused on one another, also then recognizing the parent's manipulative behavior. So it's a deflection tactic. It is a tactic to manipulate everyone around you. And it happens in all narcissistic relationships, apparently. Then you have the flying monkeys. Flying monkeys, in terms of a narcissistic family, are the family members, friends, or other allies who, knowingly or unknowingly, do the narcissist's bidding by spreading rumors, delivering guilt-inducing messages, pressuring others to comply by spying or reinforcing the narcissist's version of events. This allows the narcissist to control people indirectly while avoiding accountability. An example of this might be after an adult child sets a healthy boundary, they might get a phone call from their aunt saying, after everything she's done for you, how could you treat your mother this way? And the aunt then puts the pressure of guilt. You've got the mechanism of divide and conquer, which is a strategy that narcissistic parents use to keep family members from forming close, trusting relationships with one another. I mean, that really is kind of sick. I've seen people do this with, I've seen narcissists do this with their children and grandparents. Like, they don't want their children forming close relationships with the grandparents because somehow they feel threatened by that. Um, they want to be, what is it they say? The bride at the wedding and the corpse in the funeral. Everything has to revolve around this person. As a mother myself, I want as many people in my child's life who love him unconditionally, which is going to be his family members. I mean, really, that doesn't come from the outside world, but it absolutely comes from parents. It comes from grandparents in healthy relationships, and aunts and uncles, cousins. So to cut people out of your child's life, I mean, unless there is a reason, there are people who deserve to be cut out of children's lives. But yeah, you need a good reason. It can't just be that like you feel threatened because your child is being loved by somebody else. That's really messed up. Let's see, divide and conquer. We're still on that one. Playing favorites, spreading different stories to different people, creating jealousy, or encouraging competition. They ensure that family members are too divided to unite or challenge the dysfunction. So it will cause things like sibling rivalries, favoritism, where one child will feel like, okay, well, you certainly love that child more than you love the rest of us. And there will be no united front. There's the mechanism of conditional love. It's when love, approval, and affection are given only when a child behaves in a way that meet the narcissistic parent's expectations. Instead of feeling accepted for who they are, the child learns that love must be earned through obedience, achievement, or making the parent happy. So an example of this is if the parent is warm and affectionate and loving when the child wins an award or some kind of achievement, but becomes cold and critical and emotionally distant, maybe even giving the silent treatment when the child disagrees or makes a mistake, or even if they set a boundary. So love is earned through obedience and not freely given. Again, huge mistake in parenting. Enmeshment. Enmeshment is when healthy emotional boundaries between parent and child are blurred or non-existent, causing the child to feel responsible for the parent's emotions, needs, or happiness. Instead of developing their own identity, the child learns that independence, privacy, or disagreement is a form of betrayal. So an example of this would be like if a parent expects their child to be their confidant. They rely on them for emotional support. They become hurt when they spend time with their friends or people outside of the parent, or they react with guilt or anger when the child becomes more independent, when they establish healthy boundaries and healthy independence. So there are no boundaries with these parents. Parents treat the children like spouses, like I was saying before. Children are responsible for adult emotions, and there can be a problem with privacy in these relationships too. Like in an adult child's, that might look like the parent wanting to know all of the ins and outs of the child's marital relationship. And there is a difference between being very close, where you can kind of freely tell your parent everything, and them expecting to be in on everything and for you to never have any privacy. So what happens to the children? Adults that are raised this way often become people pleasers, perfectionists, hyper-vigilant. They will be conflict avoidant. They turn into caretakers, highly empathetic sometimes, unable to trust themselves, afraid of disappointing people, terrified of rejection, unable to identify their own needs. If they don't become the narcissist themselves, they may subconsciously attract a narcissist into their life, or multiple narcissists into their life, because that dysfunction feels familiar, it feels safe, it feels comfy to the subconscious mind that views that as love, because that's the love that it was given the example of. And anything calm and healthy is going to feel boring consciously to them, but it's going to feel terrifying to the subconscious mind. And the nervous system is kind of leading the show, and it will mistake anxiety for a connection. Like, oh my God, this person is so thrilling. And it's not that they're thrilling, it's that they're potentially dangerous. And it's important for us to, be able to, I don't know, differentiate. Golden scapegoat. Oh no. They need to be in control of every situation. Yes. Cassandra says, I love boring now. Oh gosh, you said a mouthful. It's so true. Boring is so appealing now. I think that's just everybody's just worn out. It's like a rubber band that keeps getting stretched and stretched and stretched. And like, we're all just kind of, I don't know, lying there limp. Hey, Morning Flower. Hey, Duppy. I mean, they can all be scary. All of the different types can be scary in their own way. But it's really when they're not being, when they're not recognized, when people are making excuses for it, or they're not seeing it clearly, or seeing it for what it is. So that's why the first step is recognizing, okay, this was actually not a healthy dynamic that I grew up in. Learning what healthy boundaries are and then implementing them into your life is a really good way to start to heal from that process and make sure that you're not repeating it. I saw this little video the other day that had dandelions, and it was about ending a cycle of, ending a cycle, whatever cycle it is throughout a family, something toxic, something not good. And it was just this cute little cartoon of dandelions, very sad actually, dandelions in this little patch of grass that are all just, dying, turning brown and plopping to the floor. And this dandelion just pulls itself up by the roots and starts going across the hot sidewalk, trying to get to a healthier patch of grass. And of course, that sidewalk is killing the dandelion, and it finally collapses just before it gets to the grass, but it, lets out all of its seeds. And so the seeds are allowed to scatter on this new green, lush grass. I mean, it really can be that dramatic. It's very hard to break the cycles that we grow up with, and it can go on for hundreds of years. I mean, it can be in your DNA from way, way back. And I think it's one of the good things that we do have going on our planet right now is that people are talking about these things, and people are, for the first time, really en masse learning what these things are and learning to change them. Because it's like, people in previous generations would say like, yeah, I didn't have such a great childhood, or I didn't have such a great upbringing, but weren't really able to pinpoint it, other than like, yeah, my mom was emotionally unavailable and she was manipulative and we always felt guilty or whatever. But to understand now and to see the dynamic and know how to change it is really important. So now we're just talking about, these are just the ways to help break the cycle. If you recognize these things, find your own identity outside of the one assigned to you by your family. Because these things stick with us. This is why when this is why sometimes, like, even though we're adults and we all have our own lives and we might be living a pretty healthy life and kind of moved on, when the family gets together for a holiday or for whatever, this is why they become battlefields, because everyone reverts back to their childhood roles or the roles of the family in general. And it can reopen those old wounds instantly. So anytime the family is around each other, I mean, like siblings might even catch themselves getting into petty arguments like they would have when they were kids. It's like everybody just kind of steps back into their role. You have to consciously make sure that you are being aware and not doing that. Rebuilding self-trust, learning that disagreement isn't rejection, that it should be, that it's okay to disagree, accept that some family members might never change. They might never learn their lesson. And then you get to decide whether or how you are going to protect yourself from that person. If they're toxic in your life, if they are doing harm to you, if it's just like, every person has to weigh that on their own, because obviously having to cut out a family member is a big deal. That's nothing to take lightly. But I do know people who have literally needed to do that in order to protect themselves or protect their children. And yeah, sometimes people do have to do that, and that can be a hard conclusion to come to. But sometimes healing requires distance. It requires being able to not fall into the same trap, the same pattern over and over again. Yeah, so sometimes going no contact. Setting strong boundaries. That is like something that most people I know struggle with, at least to some extent. When there's any kind of inconsistency with boundaries as a child, that's gonna kind of stick with you. And because we're also kind of taught to be selfless and that these are good things, that it is noble to be selfless. It is noble to forgive rather than asserting yourself or sticking up for yourself or whatever. It's not so easy to establish where those healthy boundaries lie. It's interesting to me how siblings can have the same upbringing. They grew up in the same house, they had the same parents, but they have a completely different memory of what childhood was like, or a completely different feeling. It's because they had different roles. If you were the golden child and the other one was the scapegoat, yeah, you're going to have almost two completely different childhoods. So I guess that's important to keep in mind also, that like, if you have a sibling like this, it's not, you're both telling the truth. It's just that you both have different perspectives. You just have to let them go. It's hard when things are going good, especially. Age of Aquarius is about helping each other more, I hear. Helping oneself grow healthfully is a good start, in my opinion, too. Yeah, I mean, we hopefully find the things that helped us, and then we share them with other people. Not everything is going to look the same for each person. I always present whatever it is. Like, if I find something that helped me, if looking into a particular topic helped me and I feel like I learned something, then that's what I share. And I do think that that's kind of the bigger picture, rather than like arguing with everybody about the way that the world should be run. Help people to lift themselves up, help people to break the patterns so that we are not living in these same cycles. It's like the microcosm versus the macrocosm. Most of us, probably all of us, have very little control over what goes on in the macrocosm, but we might have a huge impact on one person or several people around us. So I think that's precisely the point, is just like, well, first helping yourself, making sure that you are coming from a healthy place, doing a lot of self-examination. It is like, to me, the awakening is getting your ego broken time after time after time, being brought to your knees, going through traumatic stuff, having people treat you terribly, being just in the fetal position, and then having to rebuild from that. Because like, if things are easy, what are you going to have to teach anybody? Hey, garden hoe. It takes work, but once I finally realized it, I can move forward even when it's scary. Be like Nike, just do it. I hate that they took that slogan because it's such an incredible slogan. And they're such a terrible company. But it's true. Yeah, just do it. One of the other things about when you establish your healthy boundaries, it might not just upset the narcissist. It could be treated as betrayal by the rest of the family, because you're literally leaving the system. So it upsets everything. It upsets the balance of everything. And you might be labeled as selfish because your role helped keep the family stable. And that's unfortunate. I don't even know what that is, Garden Hoe. So anyway, the pattern, I mean, the pattern of this kind of abuse, and that's what it is ended when we recognize it, when we take the steps in our life to not pass it on and to heal ourselves from it. I mean, even if you don't have children, you could be passing it on to the other people in your life through your relationships. So the pattern can be everywhere. It doesn't just get passed down in families. And it doesn't ever work for the narcissist either. So even if you find yourself in the pattern of like, well, maybe I have some narcissistic tendencies and maybe I have some unhealthy habits where I need to control everything or get all of my validation externally or whatever, you will be so much happier if you find a way to heal that, to confront it, to be honest with yourself, integrate that shadow portion of yourself, if you will. Because a narcissist is never going to end up happy. They're just going to be searching for the next supply after supply after supply. And that's no way to live. Theater rehearsals after school were was the start of me staying away from my home longer during tough teen times. Oh, I'm sorry about that. If you saw how many screens I have open right now, my Lord. So anyway, guys, this was kind of just a brief overview of the dynamic, but maybe it gave you a little bit of something that kind of popped your eyes open and you were like, oh, okay, so maybe there is a name for what I felt when I was growing up, and maybe there's a reason that I feel these things now as an adult. I truly believe that everybody can not only break the patterns, but they can also mend whatever damage was done through that by confronting it, being realistic about it. Oh, the puzzle piece wants me to do my thing. Obviously, I'm a firm believer in hypnosis. That's the easiest way to access the subconscious and change the subconscious programming. But there are other ways to do, I mean, repetition. You constantly are reminding yourself to behave a certain way or take a different perspective, journaling, classical therapy. which I'm not a huge fan of, but I also know that there are people that get benefits from that. So I won't dog it. Talking to friends about it, being a little bit choosier with the relationships that we get into, setting healthier boundaries. Oh, thanks, Cassandra. Can I hypnotize someone? Yes, I can hypnotize all someone's. Yes, I am a hypnotherapist. I have I grew up with it, but I also went to school for it myself 20 years ago. And yeah, I'm even starting to do that again. I'm starting to do hypnotherapy again. In fact, I have a session coming up tomorrow. I think it's wonderful. I know it gets, there are a lot of people that don't understand it, that have their opinions about it, but it's always the people that really don't understand it that have those opinions. Like, so is that really an opinion? I don't know what you would call that. But that's what I would recommend. Friend to friend. Because, and I don't recommend going and doing, like digging into your past. Because there are ways to help mend yourself. There are ways to stop the symptoms without digging up the initial trauma or whatever it is that you went through. And because in hypnosis, it's so easy to have somebody uncover and unroot these memories or whatever it is. Sometimes those things are there to protect you. So I don't ever recommend really doing that unless you have a hypnotherapist that you know for certain is really, really responsible and is not just going to go digging for no reason. Because like I said, the problems can be solved without having to dig all of that stuff up. So, but I think it's like magic. Honestly, I would say it was like magic if I didn't know exactly how it worked and why scientifically. But I think it's just the coolest. All right, guys. Well, let me scoot out of here. Thanks everyone on TikTok. Sorry I had your thing covered the whole time, but I will be back. I do my shows Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. And that show is called When Are My Socks? And we go into fun conspiracies and all the weird stuff. And then this is the NARC Ages, where we talk about narcissism and sociopathy and kind of all of the dark personality traits and learn how to protect ourselves from it. So I hope I see you guys again. All right. And then also our friendlians on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for being here. I have a song to end this. And it's actually about siblings. And I knew that this song I loved this song and thought it was beautiful and hadn't really listened to the lyrics, but I kind of liked it. And then I heard that it was about the relationship of adult siblings. And then it's like the most heartbreaking song on the planet, but it's really, really beautiful. So anyway, that is the song that I have for you guys going out. I've heard that 30% of the population cannot be hypnotized. About 30% of the population did not fall for the BS pandemic. Well, that's actually not true. Everybody can be hypnotized. That's like saying 30% of the population can't sleep. Sleep or hypnosis is a natural state that we all must and do go in and out of naturally throughout the day. So everyone can experience hypnosis. As far as being hypnotized by another person, it takes different modalities for the different ways that people process information. But if you have a good hypnotherapist, they should be able to, they have an arsenal in their belt of different ways to hypnotize people. So they should be able to hypnotize anyone. I've never run into a single person that I couldn't hypnotize. I've hypnotized many people, especially the ones that say that they can't be hypnotized. Those are actually tend to be the ones that are the easiest to hypnotize. So I don't think it really has to do with hypnosis, although I know that that is an element to it. I do believe there is a part of hypnosis that is used in all propaganda, in everything that we experience online, TV, whatever. But there's definitely more to it than that. But that is an interesting thought. All right, you guys.